Hey everybody, I'm really excited to be doing this again. Really excited to be doing a full podcast this time and not kind of clips. So this is the Wolfpack Podcast, Ep.1, and we are here with today's guest, which is Max Jarrett. Max is a local personal trainer. He's going to introduce us where he works, but we're going to be talking about kettlebell swings. We're going to be talking about his journey into kettlebells, and he's got a really worthwhile, interesting thing that he's going into as an adventure, and we're going to talk about that, and then a little bit more on the side. So, Max, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, man. Just to go through, because we were chatting earlier, and we got into quite a bit of depth about kind of like the difference in gyms and setups and kettlebells, and your little intro to kettlebell sports you did last week. So just talk me through like how you became, like what type of PT you are, how you became a PT, and how you ended up at Pure Gym.
Okay, so I'm a PT at Pure Gym, obviously. I'm more into my sort of athletic and movement rather than aesthetic sort of training. I like kettlebells. That's sort of it's been an ongoing, it's been ongoing trying to get into kettlebells a little bit. I think back in college where I did my gym instructor, they decided to do a kettlebell course, and I didn't know much about kettlebells at this point. And then all of a sudden the test came up, started learning them, passed me for it, obviously. But then as I started learning about kettlebells a little bit more and more, you realise like how little that actually was, and that was just like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So just been exploring it ever since, trying to get form down and just exploring the whole thing.
It's always funny if you look back, like because I teach some instructor courses, and I'm trying to get a sports instructor syllabus for EKA kind of like pushed in and working on. But it's amazing when you go to people that are on like a PT block and they do like an element of kettlebells and they get like anywhere between maybe 2 and 6 hours, and they're then expected to be able to go and teach it. And for some of them, that's the first, like, was that like the first time you picked a kettlebell up was on an instructor's course? So if you think about it, you would have gone to teach with it, and you might have started a kettlebell class and had someone who's been doing years of training, and you're going to teach him after doing a 6-hour like introduction to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think back at what my teacher was teaching me and then her form, and I was just, now I look back and I just think, wow, like, did you really know that much about kettlebells? Had that just been 2 hours for you and then 2 hours for me, you know? And there's not much experience around there, I think. You've got to really delve into it to find out the benefits.
What were your immediate, because you had like, if you remember, you were saying you had like shoulder injuries.
Yeah, so so that opened me up to kettlebells. That was the first time I'd ever like touched a kettlebell, really. But I didn't really, because they only gave me sort of a little brief overview of it. I didn't see much of the benefit. I then started training. I just loved training, just like a gym bro, just kind of like, oh, let's bench every day, and just typical, lack of knowledge. And my body was just suffering. My shoulders. I remember there was times. And I used to go to sleep and I'd wake up every few hours because I couldn't lie on one side for long enough. I couldn't lie on my front because I couldn't have my arms above my head. I couldn't lie on my side because it was just the pressure, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
And started looking up like, what am I going to do about this? I can't just keep not sleeping. So I found out about kettlebells again,
Yeah.
Then I started doing some kettlebell moves, started learning about, stuff like the windmill. Even just going through an overhead press, things like that, but with full range of movement, all of a sudden my shoulder pains just went.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I was like, I can sleep. And I slept through the night and I thought, that's it, that's what I want to do.
See, I first got in through sports, through combat sports. See, I have like, I wanted to be a good kickboxer and I wanted to be good at MMA. And the one thing that I had was I had a really weak punch. I was an average, like, tactical fighter. My fitness was around the level it was meant to be. My kicks were good. I just had no real power to my punch. And it didn't seem to matter how much I bench pressed. It didn't seem to matter how many hundreds of press-ups you did. I just didn't have a strong punch. And like, there was a trainer at that gym. So other people don't know this. So I was at LA Fitness, which is the same building that you're now at. That's now Pure Gym.
Yeah.
And like, funny talking about commercial gyms and things. I remember when I passed my level 3. Left LA Fitness. I remember them saying, like, it was 2007, 2008, and they were saying, it's the wrong time to go and leave a commercial gym. It's the wrong time to go and do something independent. You're never going to last. It's too brutal an environment. And then they folded, like LA Fitness pulled out of there, and lo and behold, it's a pure gym. But like the person there first got me into it was a guy who I interviewed him years ago. Was a guy called Paul Connor. And he was one of the best PTs in that gym, and his body was insane. He's in his 50s, and he's still jacked now, but his body was back then it was ridiculous, and he never really touched a weight, and everyone was like, how do you look like that? But you never even picked up really a dumbbell, and he was just always doing kettlebells, and again he was always doing presses, swings, windmills, snatches, squats, get-ups. So there's just 6 exercises. And then I just thought, I'm going to learn these 6 exercises. Did a course with him, and then that was like the start to the rabbit hole. And I just kind of went down and back then you didn't have there was no Facebook, there was no TikTok, there was no YouTube. Really, YouTube was kind of like something that you might get something to watch that was on TV. It wasn't like an encyclopedia of information like it is now. So you couldn't I remember having to go and find people to teach me up and down the country once I kind of exhausted that source of info, if it made sense. Yeah, you did. You used to travel. I went up to Leeds to do courses. There's Steve Cotter came to UK for one of the last times he came to the UK, and I did the IKFF level 1 with him, and that was my first intro into kettlebell sports. But I only found him because I'd literally kind of gone everywhere I could go to find every bit of info that I could find out of it, really. But one thing I wanted to ask about is, before we get derailed too much over it, is you've got your swing record attempt.
Yes.
So let's talk about that first, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, in New Year, one of my friends, sadly, he committed suicide, and it hit pretty hard, to be honest. I haven't had to deal with anything like that before. A lot went through my mind, and I was sort of struggling.
Yeah.
And it was on my own. That was the worst, With other people, you can sort of just distract yourself a little bit. But I felt myself just, not dealing with it too well. Then I decided I had to do something about it, I need to focus, I need to have something. And to be honest, a little bit, I know, people say, it's not your fault and everything, and I know that's true, but you can't help the feeling of almost guilt. That, you could have...
We talked about this when we first met, didn't we, a little bit? It's such a crazy thing, and it's such a... sometimes it's overwhelming, and sometimes it's just constantly in the back of your mind, a feeling that's always there. But one thing about it is doing things that are productive will always help with things like that. Doing things you can't fix anything, you can't change anything, but doing things that benefit you and help you move through stuff are always going to be beneficial to things that don't. As well as doing things that are positive, you're doing something for charity that can help other people, and that's a good mindset for it. But it's also about you putting yourself through something so that you come out the other end feeling like you've done something positive.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the first thing I decided is that I wanted to do something. It wasn't, I'm not saying preventable and stuff like this, but I wanted to do something that would either raise awareness or help other people that haven't been in this situation yet, and hopefully you could prevent.
Yeah.
So decided I wanted to do a charity event, and then the first thing that popped in my mind was kettlebells.
Cool.
I'm very competent with the swing and stuff like that, so I was looking around, and I wanted to choose something that would really challenge me physically but mentally. I feel like a lot of challenges that are short challenge you physically, but mentally, everyone can keep themselves together for a few hours.
Yeah.
So what I've chosen is the 24-hour kettlebell swing, where I'm allowed to put it down, but it's just how many swings I can get in the 24 hours, and the record at the moment stands at 10,571 swings.
It's by an American, isn't it?
Yes, Don Heald or Heald. And I just thought that one, it doesn't require me to, because I've got a lot of other things going on, and it doesn't require me to learn a new skill. It just requires me to push.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the charity event goes as well, I'm hoping that when we do this, because obviously we'll be holding it here, hopefully that we can make a sort of an event out of this where people can come down, try and get some free exercise classes on, get some representatives from some charities that I want to do this for, and try and just spread awareness and raise money for the right charities.
Yeah.
But that's the goal.
So we're saying you're going to do, your plan for it, rather than we're saying your plan for it is you're going to do 45 minutes EMOMs, 12 reps. So for people that like don't know a lot about like how that structure would work, basically on a minute time, and it goes off every minute.
Yep.
Every minute it goes off, you're going to do 12 swings and put it down.
Yep.
So that's going to save your back a lot. You're going to get to reset and have a couple of seconds stretch the back out. And then after 45 minutes, you will have done 45 times 12. So you'll have done...
including the one at the start as well.
Yeah. So that's going to cut you into a big chunk, and then you get 15 minutes rest.
Yeah.
So in those 15 minutes, the first few hours, you might be walking around and talking to people. It's like, when it gets to 2 o'clock in the morning, those 15 minutes, you're just going to be a lump on the floor.
Yeah, trying to stay awake.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that will help is we decided, so the Wolfpack teams, the Wolfpack Kettlebell Club, which is sort of like an essence in its own self at the moment with everything they're doing, they've decided that we're going to give you basically one guy to click the whole way through, so we don't lose count. So we're going to have one guy click in, and we'll just switch around the hours, like hour after hour. I'm going to have someone swinging with you for like the whole 24. So at least then, like, you've got a different person to kind of like push you through it and push on through it and kind of like motivate you to keep going. And then if we can get people to come down here, I'm pretty sure that will work out to your favor as well.
Well, I'm hoping that one of the messages I would like to would be that, you know, things are hard, you know, things get hard, but doing it on your own is even harder.
Yeah.
The amount of, when I first pictured doing this, I hadn't spoken to you yet, and I pictured doing this, and the mountain it seemed to climb over seemed really hard.
Yeah.
But as soon as I spoke to you, the support, just knowing that there's going to be other people there, all of a sudden just made it even seem easier. Yeah. You know, the hardest part that I feel of this whole thing now is organising the actual charity event, and I'm more nervous about that and getting that right and getting across the right message, having the right people there, making sure that we're giving the support, and it's not just an event where people come, they just donate a bit of money and don't think about it. You know, I'm making sure that's right is the thing that I'm more worried about than the actual event itself.
What's good about that is that in a message, because you were talking about like guys' mental health particularly.
Yes.
And there's still, even though I think it's changed very much. So I had someone that I was, so I worked with him in a previous role, and it's a similar kind of environment, and it was very, it was very surprising to me how much guilt I felt when there wasn't really a justification for that guilt, to the point where you almost felt, are you doing it for your own reward in a sense? Whereas the biggest thing about it is, the biggest thing to take away that I took away from him was, it's so much harder for men to talk about stuff. 100%. Still to this day. And it's not saying, like you were saying a few weeks when you first came here, that you're not taking anything away from other charities, other needs, but you want to raise a real point about like men's mental health at the moment. Yeah, it is something that people do talk about more, like probably post-COVID is probably one of those things that's changed it, because everybody had things they were dealing with in COVID, but it's still a stigma that men are supposed to battle for it. Like men are supposed to crack on, men are supposed to just deal with it.
The term man up. One of the charities that I was, one of the organisations I was looking at, they're called Man Up. I think it's got a question mark after it. And I think they're trying to take the term and recoin it as sort of putting it out there, because it used to just get thrown around, that term, man up.
Yeah.
You know, no one would think twice about it. But I think that getting a presence about that, and they actually did a lot more during COVID, I think.
Yeah.
because of obviously all that. But I think that in the past, even it's drilled into you. Like in the past, I've had certain stuff to deal with, and you think it's almost like a weakness.
Yeah.
To talk to people and show that you've got these.
Because as well, like also, like one thing is like there's a difference between talking about something that you're struggling with. It doesn't mean you're not coping. If that makes sense, you know, there's a difference between like if you're talking about mental health and you're talking about depression, just because you're saying that you're struggling with something doesn't mean you're giving up.
No.
So it's not in you're just restructuring a format of which like guys will talk to each other about stuff they're going through, rather than thinking that they have to battle through it alone, or that they are alone. And then when they actually do talk about it, realizing that you're probably in such a common position as opposed to what you actually think. And again, like you said, that it's not just whatever things that have got you to that place that you're dealing with. It's not just that. It's also an isolation that you're dealing with it on your own. And there's also that sense that there's no way out of it. There's no escape from it. And just if you can take one of those elements away, the other elements are so much easier to battle and process and get yourself into kind of, not positions, but get yourself into kind of a sense of momentum, because you've done one of the hardest barriers, which is start talking about it.
100%. Sometimes it's, some things happen, and like you were saying about thinking that you're not alone in that situation, but not realizing other people are dealing with it themselves. And then sometimes even just talking to someone, even that, just a little bit of help knowing. I find also that talking to someone about my problem that they can sort of empathize with helps me personally more. But you're never going to know who knows about it until you talk about it, you know? So that first step's really important. And I think some of these charities that I'm looking at, they're really trying to push just getting the awareness out that it's okay to talk, you know, that is the first step, you know.
There's a guy, you were talking about kettlebell sports, Mr. McGregor, there's a guy in the kettlebell sports community, he's relatively new to it, his name's Ben Morris, and he lifts similar lifts to what I lift, so he lifts that 40 kilogram lift, so we'll be seeing him in March down at Dale Wilson's comp, but he's a mental health coach, and he works with a lot of rugby teams, and he was on a podcast, and he said a lot of really interesting stuff. So he was on a podcast I've listened to called Sport and Life. No, it wasn't Sport and Life. It was Health Oddity. Correction, it was Health Oddity with James St. Pierre. And he was talking a lot about that concept, about like the first thing of doing is talking about it, and then realizing that other people are going through the same thing that you're going through, and then you get that sense that you leave the sense of isolation, and then you slowly start getting, particularly if you're involved in sports, because he's a very point advocate of sports for mental health and exercise for mental health, but there's something about doing things together that really helps you feel like you're not alone, whether it's like it can be work related, it can be charity related, it can be pastime related, but with sports, what you go through is you go through something hard together, and you go through difficulty together, and that creates a real good sense of bond. So one thing that I'm quite happy we're going to do is you're going to have somebody with you for each hour of the swing, and again, they're going to struggle, you're going to struggle, but doing that together, that kind of really shows hopefully what one of the best messages we're going to be about on the day, hopefully. And it'd be good if we can get people here to do it, then that would be pretty awesome as well. How's the training going?
I'll tell you what, it's hard not to do more. Yeah. Like the volume you get done on a single day. So for example, I did last training day, what day are we on now? Wednesday. Last training day was on Monday, and of swings, and I did 2 hours and 15 minutes. So when I say 2 hours and 15 minutes, I mean the 1 hour block, which was the 45 minutes. Yep. And then the 15-minute cycle in between, and then another 45-minute block, and then followed by a 15-minute block. So I did my 2 hours and 15.
And were you just going to add like a 15-minute block?
Yeah, so that will be my, I call it the tempo training day, where I'm just working on that tempo and building it up so I get accustomed to it. It's hard just not to do more. And it's hard to tell myself, okay, these rest days, don't do more, you know? Because one thing I found as well is that sometimes when you're dealing with things, I like to hide in sport, in exercise sometimes, and sometimes that's just the best way for me to... So sometimes it gets a little bit harder not to just do a lot more. But yeah, they've got the 2 hours and 15, but obviously it's with a 24 kilo kettlebell, so you accumulate thousands of kilos.
You work out your actual tonnage that you've lifted, yeah. It's
it was
impressive.
insane. I think I'm right in saying it was like 26,000 or something.
So then you're going to work it out. If you do the actual reps you're aiming to do, you can estimate how much total weight you'd have lifted. But you're doing a long run and a sprint run. Is essentially. So you're going adding to your duration. To add your intensity, and then on the other day you're adding your weight.
So to add your intensity. On the other day I'll just do the hour, so the 45 minute. And what I'll do with that is I split that 45 into 3 15-minute blocks. So I'll do them obviously back to back, but the first 15-minute block, like last time I did with a 26, and then the next block 28,
and then 32.
And then the next block. Oh no, I did a 30 for that one.
30,
So 26, 28, 30. I found someone told me about the 2
2 kilograms.
Yeah, I was looking for a 30 and I couldn't find one, and they slapped me on the bottom.
So kettlebell sports, everything's by derivatives of 4 kilograms. It's always weird when you go into a gym and see like a 9 kilogram kettlebell or something like that, and you're kind of like, where did that come from, right? A 5 kilogram bell.
Yeah, I've got a 5 on
it. But the reason for it is so kettlebells, one of their origins was, and one of the reasons why it was round is and the size of it is what they used to raise grain in Russia with. So basically the farmers would have a pood, and a pood was a 16 kilogram, I think, one pood weighed out at. And I might be slightly off on the actual, but they would then derive it like it would go up by 4 kilograms. So you would buy your grain in 4 kilogram measure. So the kettlebells that are there to weigh them would be going up like in pood equivalents. So 2 pood was 32 kilograms. And at the end of the day, what they would do, like the thing the village would do, is the men would come out of the street later once the business was done, and they'd have a 32 kilogram, a 2 pood kilogram weight each, and they'd just try and outlift each other. And the women would come and watch it, and it was a kind of like, you get people from a different village would challenge that person, you get merchants traveling, you get travelers coming around, so you get that. It's where the whole concept, because the sport originates from it, is where that whole concept comes up. But that's why everything comes up in 4 kilograms. And as we westernized it, right back when kettlebells first came into this country, you could only get them 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, maybe a 28, 32. And it was Wolverson that then, from America, they started realizing that some people, you're strong enough to lift. The difference in being able to lift 24 and 28 kilograms is huge. The difference in trying to lift 28 and 32 kilograms is even bigger. So to make progression of the sport easier, we started coming up with 10s, 14s, 18s, and that's why they're still quite rare. So it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to get hold of a 30 kilogram kettlebell. They just don't get made as much, and they're quite sought after, so they're always sold out. So to get a 30 kilogram bell is really, really hard, and it's also, again, like, it's a lot more expensive. So the 2 kilogram weight plates, because they're magnetic, they're a really good way of, like if you've got 28s, whack 2 kilograms, now you've got a 30, and then it makes that small progression up to 32 a lot easier. But
that makes more sense.
But it's always fascinating me, like, how many people, like, if I was doing a kettlebell course, one of the first things I would talk about would be the history of it. But it just makes sense to talk about it.
We didn't get to all the history.
No. Like the reason, one of the first things I learning about exercise is where the definition of a dumbbell came from, and it was a bell in Scotland. They were basically lift church bells, but they weren't. I think there was a thing that the English said they weren't allowed to exercise. So if they lift the church bell, it would make a big clang. So they'd take the clanger out, and it was, quote, a dumb bell. And as that translated, that's why we now have a term for dumbbells. It's such a weird way that, like, but you would think that strength training 101 would tell you, like, that's the history of why this is called this and why it's called that. But you know, it isn't. You did a bit of kettlebell sports with us, and you started getting into that, and you started talking about getting a bug to do it.
Yes,
so
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I mean, I've been into, just the typical, swings, cleans, snatches, windmills. Just some flow stuff as well. Recently started getting into a little bit of kettlebell juggling, because I was getting a little bit it's just monotonous, just
Yeah.
swings, clean, snatches, and I enjoy it. But then I was thinking, what else can I do with this? And I didn't know about kettlebell sport yet. So I started kettlebell juggling. So, just doing the flips, the bells and whistles,
It's very relatable. You have to go on YouTube. There's a guy who I randomly, my first ever competition I went to was in Detroit, and the guy next to me was a guy called Sergey Rudnev, who's one of the most well-known figures in this sport, and I was completely flipping oblivious to who he was. I found out later who this guy was, but you can see his juggling. You can type Sergey Rudnev kettlebell juggling, and the stuff he can do with that is pretty insane.
Some of them are incredible. I mean, there's this...
The height they can get with it as well.
There was this lady, I can't remember her name now. She's on Instagram, and it was when I was starting kettlebell juggling. I'm thinking, okay, I'll just look up a little bit more about this, see what other types of flips there are. And at this point, when you're at the start of something and you think you're like, oh yeah, I'm getting good at this. And then the more you learn, the more you're like, okay, actually, I'm so beginner, it's unreal. And anyway, and then she did this move and she was just juggling around and she just throws it effortlessly over her back, flips over. She doesn't even look. She
just catches it. Yeah.
More flips. And I'm thinking, okay, right, now I'm not at that yet. But yeah, so I started doing a bit of that. And then when I came here, and you showed me the kettlebell sports, you asked me to hang around afterwards if I wanted to. And that was, I loved it, I just loved it straight away. Ruined my hands. The first time,
that's me
they're
today.
Still cut, they still bleed every now and then. And it was
do they not go with swings? Are they right with swings?
The swings are okay.
Yeah.
I think it was when the bell was going over me, gripping it at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It was a timing issue, I think. But one of the things I noticed from that class was, one of the things that stood out the most was the amount of high-end performers you had in this class. And you could walk past them in the street and just think, okay, yeah, you're fit, but not right up here.
Yeah.
And then I'm in a commercial gym where everyone's about aesthetics and there's mirrors everywhere. There's not one single mirror in this room.
No, I don't have a mirror in the bathroom anymore. I broke it.
There was that lady over
Hannah.
in the corner. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I can tell who it is because they're in the corner, surrounded by chalk. Yeah.
And I was just trying to get to grips with it, and I was thinking, I'll use a 24 because I'm doing that on my swings anyway. And we were doing this, and it was 15 minutes, wasn't it, the first bit?
Yeah.
The first 3 minutes, I thought, oh my God, this is a lot different than I'm used to.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, I'm actually struggling, but I've got to do it. And then I look over, and she's using the same weight as me, effortlessly. And then I'm only doing the half cleans, and then the jerk. She's just doing snatch down, and it was insane.
I think firstly again, I'm amazingly proud of these guys, what they've managed to achieve. If the gym never lasts more than a couple of years, and if the team, for whatever reason, if things happen and it ends up sort of breaking itself down, which some things just you can only contain for so long. What we've achieved in the past 2 years has been something special. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we can do this for 10, 15 years until they retire. But I think there's been something special over the last 24 months we've had here in terms of what they've managed to get, the work they've put into it. And I think I've only played a small part in that because they've got to lift the bell themselves at the end of the day. You can coach them and lead them, but they've got to, and this sport it's a mixture of the fitness, the cardio. There's a little bit of strength in it, but a lot less than people think. It's much more fitness, but a bit like running. I really similar it to long distance running. It's much more mental sport.
100%.
Of just, I'm going to do one more rep.
100%. Those first 3 minutes, I thought, how am I going to do another 12 minutes of this, and then another that minutes of that, and then that minutes of that, and then as I was kind of looking around, I just kind of realized it's a mindset, really, isn't it?
Kettlebell sports, and we were talking about athletes and saying how do people hear what they're doing. You were you'd walk past the street and you wouldn't think that person looks like an athlete. But the thing I always say about that is you would recognize a boxer by the fact that his nose was all bent out.
Yeah.
Right? You'd recognize, you might maybe take rugby players where the scrum have to be a certain shape.
Yeah.
Maybe take basketball players where you kind of have to be a certain height. But if you look at, I was at Abbey Gate School doing kettlebells with they've got a real good sports program, and they've got a lot of really high level. They've got triathlon runners, they've got track and field runners, and they've got a junior judo world champion at their school.
Wow.
They've got a massive budget for the sporting drive. You would look at all three of them, and exactly the same thing. You'd think, okay, they obviously are in shape, but you wouldn't take a look at them and go, world champion athlete, world champion athlete. Whereas if you walked into like, let's name what are the top 3 gyms around here for lifting weights.
I think you got so many just other type of commercial ones.
You got
loads of those.
You go to any commercial gym and you'll find like you will find big dudes.
Yeah. And
you'll find girls that lift. But if you walked into the other gyms that are there for weightlifting, those guys are so big. They're huge, right? But again, like you said, how many of them can't sleep on their front? Like how many? If you think about how when you get in shoulder problems, how realistically how big were you by comparison? Yeah. And this is my thing about sports over aesthetics is you can be. I'm 41 this year, and I'm still as competitive as I can be in my sport. And I've probably realistically like my body's. I've been saying this year, I'm feeling it more than any year, like the aches, the pains. I think my body's starting to tell me.
Catching up with you.
Yeah, like 40 kilograms has got a date on it, and once that date's gone, you're either quitting or dropping down the weight. But if I just wanted to get jacked as big as I could possibly be, I'll be in so much pain every day, and like I can still run 5Ks close to 20 minutes, like out on the road. Like no one that big is doing that. And it's kind of a cost to rewards. And it's like
funny
thing.
though, because some people, there was a couple PTs who were at Pure Gym, and I was trying to explain to them how I don't want the people who want to get jacked. I'm about movement and athleticism, and they're gonna need me.
Yeah,
they can go with someone else, get big. They're gonna miss out on all this. Give it a few years or a few months. They're gonna need someone else to go. Okay, I'm being big, but now. Just how like what I went through. I'm not saying I was big, but just the same thing I went through. Of okay, now I need to learn how to feel good.
And the other thing as well is like one if that's your concept. Again, you talk about cultures of fitness and concepts of fitness, right? If that's what you want to do. Go and do it. Go 100%. And do it. Like I was always into fitness because of sports. I was never really. I started out life getting into this. I started out wanting to be an actor. And that's how I first got into being in shape, because at the age of 15, 16 in the 90s, trying to get modeling auditions and job roles and stuff, it was no talent basis whatsoever. It was purely aesthetics. But I didn't like it. And then when I got into sports, it was like, oh, I've got a reason to get up and do. So I've got a reason to do. Like I want to be faster. I want to be able to kick faster. I want to be able to. I want to survive 2-minute rounds. Now I'm changing sport. I need to survive 5-minute rounds. I'm playing basketball. I need to survive 10-minute quarters. So all of that changed my concepts of fitness. But my thing about it is about athleticism and going into sports is you can do so much more of yourself over a 10, 15, 20 year period than if you just want to get ripped or big, unless you want to do it competitively, and in that case it's kind of become a sport of its own. So that's probably how people stay in it that long. But you will find, like, go and look at a decent level mid 30 to 40 year old triathlon runner and go and look at how their body can move and what their body can do. Then go and look at someone who does bench 4 days a week. Apart from bench, what can their body do? So going slightly away from kettlebell sports, going to hardstyle and going to kettlebell flow. If you were to pick, I always kind of like, I don't like doing interview style, like what's this, what's that, what's this. But if you were to pick 3 kettlebell exercises to help someone who quote wanted to get fit, what would you pick?
Ooh, fit.
It could be your day, like that's a very open, like we were just talking about your concept of fitness. So it's a very open thing.
First off, Turkish get up.
Okay.
the different elements of that, the way your body moves. I think everyone's so used to using just one plane of movement. They might just venture into another plane, but using things, in all different directions is so important. And I think people miss that.
I got one bug with the Turkish get up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nothing to do with the Turkish get up. It's my bug for like every guy, because I used to work with a lot of martial artists and sport, what I call combat fighters, sports fighters. And whenever they talk about kettlebells, they go, "Oh, it's the number one move, it's the Turkish get up." I'm like, there's literally 50 other things you can do rather than a Turkish get up to make you a better, more explosive jiu-jitsu athlete, but they just don't see it. But okay, I'll take Turkish get up.
Turkish get up. Let me think. It's a tough question actually, just to limit it to what type of I've got so many questions, like what type of person are we talking about? See, I'm thinking more about movement than anything, but Turkish get-up's my movement. I think snatches. Yeah. I think snatches are a really good one, very explosive. There's actually, I can't remember the name to it, but you're on the floor. You're not on the floor. The kettlebell's on the floor. You're driving up with this arm. You're twisting and pressing up with it whilst doing a rotation.
Oh yeah, Eric Leach does a lot of it. So
I call it the pull twist swap.
It's like it's you're pressing as you press and you just rotate, or you switch hands with the belt. At the
same
time.
So like the landmine one where you press up, explode out.
Yeah.
It's like that but with a kettlebell.
So you change, you're changing hand midline.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you'll be opening to that, away from the hand you're pushing.
Yeah, and I'm starting facing this way. I'm going to finish facing that way. Sometimes you can do it just 90 degree. Turkish get up, snatch. Yeah, they would be my three go-tos, I suppose. If I just had to do three.
Yeah, it's like it's an impossible question because then 20 seconds later something else you think something else that would knock one of them off it. But it's nice to kind of get people to say different things, because I guarantee if I asked another person who's into hardstyle or kettlebell sports or kettlebell flow, they'll come up with three completely different answers. So it's nice.
You asked me like even
6 weeks ago.
It would have been a different answer. So yeah.
And by the end of your thing, you're going to be sick to death of swings, so you won't be staying in swings.
I won't touch a swing again. I probably won't touch it.
I've said that in comps. I've put that, so I'm never pressing the bell again in my life. And then like 3 months later, it's like, I've got to qualify again. Well, look, we're catching up on time, so we're going to have to make a move now. But it's been a pleasure having you come down. What we're going to do is we're going to get on social media so everybody knows when we put a date for your event.
100%.
We'll put some stuff up about how your training's going. And we'll get as much of a buzz and a buzz around this place when you come to do your charity event, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, man.
Perfect.
Boom. It's been a pleasure. First one.
Thank you very much.
First podcast. We did it.